Alright, YouTube friends and subscribers, I've decided to do another video or narration or whatever, but this time I wanted to talk about the Xbox 360. There's been a lot of clamor amongst people about whether or not Microsoft should continue to support the Xbox 360 in favor of the Xbox One, and I'm here to give my 2 cents on it. Now, obviously, it makes sense both ways, so I'm very kind of torn on this, but I think that I have a decision, and I'm just going to explain it real quick. But before I get to that, I kind of want to go a little bit around the bush, if I may, and just kind of talk a little bit about why I think both should work, and then give my final opinion on it. Now, the Xbox 360 had a pretty remarkable life. It was notorious for being the best console because it had a high install base, so games sold on it. I don't know why, because I've already talked about how like the PlayStation 3 was technologically superior to it. But regardless, the 360 did very well for its time. And so to continue to support it makes sense, because there are people like me that I haven't bought an Xbox One yet. I'm on the verge of buying an Xbox One. It'll probably be another month or two. More likely I'll buy it closer to the winter. But for right now, I'm just kind of on the fence, kind of waiting to see what happens with it. But I'm almost there. But the point is that some of us haven't bought an Xbox One yet. And I'm just going back now, and I'm discovering games for my 360. I go to, a lot of thrift malls and flea markets and pawn shops, and you'll just be amazed at what you can find that's relatively cheap. Even going into my local GameStop, sometimes I'll find a game for like $5-10 I just can't pass up, and I get it. So because of that, discovering new games on the 360 all the time, and it kind of hinders me a little bit, at least the way that I am, because of how I do games. I usually do the story first, and then I get online with it, if there's an option to get online. And because of the fact that I don't usually buy the game within its first month or two, and I usually wait, usually means that by the time I get online with it, there's no one online. Perfect example is Lost Planet, a game that I just got into last year, and we're on our third installment of it. So I have to catch up quickly, but I've only been online with Lost Planet maybe a handful of times, and there's usually generally nobody on there, or there's like one person on there who's way overpowering. So it's just too much sometimes. And so in a sense, I think that they should continue to support it, because I went into a little bit of a rant that I never posted online because it was just too hate filled, and I decided not to do it. And maybe I'll talk about it again, and put it up. But I went into a discussion about how I like to play Phantasy Star, and so I wanted to play Phantasy Star online on my Xbox. But because of the fact they dropped support for the Xbox, and Phantasy Star Online required an Xbox Live account attached to the system, means I can't play it. It's useless. I don't care if the game costs me $1. That's a wasted dollar. I can't play it. I can pop it in, and it's not going to come up. It's not going to be able to play, because the Xbox is going to go, there's no Xbox Live Gold account on here. You can't get online to even play the offline story. So it's useless. And that's what I worry about with the Xbox 360. I worry that when Microsoft does decide to have live support be gone, which supposedly is in 2016. Supposedly. That was my last understanding anyways. I don't know if that's changed. But my understanding is that as of right now, they plan to close it around 2016. And I worry that all the stuff that I hadn't finished, like let's just say that I decided to get around to finally doing Lost Planet 3 for an example, and there's online multiplayer, and there's online achievements, but I can't get them because I can't connect online. So a completionist like me who likes to go in and try my absolute best to get 100%, sometimes you just can't. Sometimes you just can't. And I can give examples of how you can't. Mostly revolve around, again, online portions, because like with Perfect Dark Zero, for an example, I just started to play Perfect Dark Zero and there's hardly anybody on there. So, and the amount of time that it would take for me to do like the online achievements for something like a Gears of War game or a Lost Planet game or even, you know, a first-person shooter like Syndicate requires people to be online. And when they quit playing 6 months to a year in, when I'm just now getting into the game, really hinders me from getting 100%. So that's one reason why, because I think that if they continue to support it, then it gives people the opportunity to continue to be online with their favorite games. But on the other hand, it's hindering the sales of the Xbox One, which I know right now they need to focus on the Xbox One. So I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up, because like I said, the 360 still has a pretty healthy shelf life. Developers are still developing games for it. People are still buying games for the 360, because obviously they can't afford an Xbox One right now. But, so I mean, it makes sense to continue to support it, because in that way your fan base feels like you're not abandoning them. But at the same time, you want them to abandon it. I mean, let's face it, Microsoft, you want them to abandon it, which is the reason why you need to stop what you're doing. I mean, you had, perfect example, you had an exclusive with Titanfall on the Xbox One. Buy it for the Xbox One and you get it. But then you released it for the PC and you released it for the 360. So now why should I buy your Xbox One again? Because I was going to buy it for Titanfall, but now I can just get Titanfall on my 360. So, and I went into this argument earlier with like the PlayStation 4 and stuff, and how no one has a reason to buy a PlayStation 4 when most of the games that are coming out for it are also on the PS3. So that's just me. If you already own a PS3, you can get Assassin's Creed 4 on it, you can get Last of Us on it, you can get Watch Dogs on it. You have no reason to really get a PlayStation 4. But Nintendo was smart, and they dropped support for the Wii almost immediately. I think they came out maybe 1-2 more games, and that was pretty much it. Now they only make Wii U games and 3DS games. They no longer make Wii games. No one is making games for the Wii anymore, and Nintendo's basically forced you to be like, you want to play this game on the Wii U, you have to buy a Wii U. And I think it's really helping the system sell, because if you had something like, hey, here's Mario Kart 8, you can play it on the Wii U, but you can also get it for the Wii. Okay, so why should I buy it for the Wii U? You see what I'm saying? And that's a game that helped sell the Wii U, and that's just an example of what I'm talking about. And that's the reason why I think that, one, they should stop selling the 360. They should stop supporting it. They should tell people, like, look, when Watch Dogs is out, it's only on the Xbox One. There is no 360 version. When this game comes out, there is no 360 version. And if we release 360 games, they're just cheap games like Fantasia or Dance Central that no one's really going to care about anyway. But we want the exclusive AAA, hard-hitting, blockbusters, you know, $1 million selling games. We want them only on the Xbox One, so that way when people go in and they want like Advanced Warfare, for an example, the next Call of Duty that's coming out, it's only on the Xbox One. You cannot get it for your 360. And I understand, again, the reason why. But this was something that I kind of discussed with people when the PS3 launched, because when the PS3 launched, I was big into Guitar Hero. And I had all the games on my PlayStation 2. And so I was thinking about, you know, maybe I'll get Guitar Hero 3, and maybe I'll get it for the PS3. But then it was also out for the PlayStation 2, and I'm asking, like, okay, so other than like a graphical boost, what's the difference? and really it was nothing. And then there wasn't an adapter at the time that allowed you to use the same guitars, so I had to buy guitars again. Plus I had to plop down $600 for a system, plus I had to plop down $60 for a game, when really I just thought about, like, I already have a PlayStation 2, I already have 2 guitars, and I can just plop down $50 for the PS2 version, and I get the exact same songs, the exact same game experience, everything, and I don't have to spend over $1,000. But if they had made that game only on the PlayStation 3, it might have forced my hand a little bit. And that's what I'm talking about. Now, I understand that the PlayStation 4 is selling well, despite the fact that they have games that are also coming out for the PlayStation 3, but that's a whole different matter. You're talking about people that are getting PlayStation 4s because they want a next-gen system, and they want the one that's the most powerful. What I'm talking about is comparing apples to apples. You know? And I still also stand by this also with Sony as well. I think that Sony should drop support for their PlayStation 3. You shouldn't come out with games for it anymore. I understand the reasons why. Because again, there are people that are still attached to their PlayStation 3s, there's people who are still attached to their Xbox 360s, and they might even be kids, young kids who have to rely on their parents to buy them the systems. And maybe their parent can't justify, you know, a $500 box when they look at it and they see, well, this game that you want is also on the system that you already have. Why don't I just buy that for you? So, on one hand, I can see it. You want to stay loyal to the people who have backed you behind the 360. But I also think that you weren't planning to do that. I mean, I know that Phil Spencer has changed things around, but when the Xbox One was initially launched, the way that Don Matrick, or whatever his name was, made it come across, he made it seem like they had no interest at all in the 360 crowd. They were talking about always online and had to check to the internet, and if you didn't have the internet, you can just play your 360. We have a system that gets offline. It's called the Xbox 360. Like, they didn't care. That's the way that they made it seem. They made it seem like the Xbox One is what we're going to support. We're going to drop support for the 360. If you want to hang around and keep clinging onto that dinosaur, that's fine. But I really think that it needs to go, and here are 3 reasons why. I have 3 reasons in my head. I don't know if I'm going to come up with more, but here's 3 reasons why. 1, sales. And 1 and 2 kind of go hand in hand. So I'm just going to kind of, actually I think they all might go hand in hand. So just let me say this, okay? 1 is sales. If you don't have 360 support anymore, all the games that come out that people are going to want to play are going to be on the Xbox One. They have a reason to buy it now. Which goes hand in hand with reason number 2, development. If all you have is the Xbox One, they don't have to worry about coming out with a gimped version of the 360. They can work specifically within the hardware confines of the Xbox One, specifically within the hardware confines of the PS4, specifically within the hardware confines of the Wii U, of the 3DS, of the Vita. See, there's a reason why the Vita basically dropped support. They had a more powerful hardware, and they wanted developers to focus on that hardware. I still think they should have found some way to get around it, but that's just me, personally. But what I'm getting at is that, let's say that these new development kits that you're releasing that don't have the Kinect forced on it, it's supposed to give it 10% more power. Well, developers are going to want to use every bit of that power that they can to make the best game possible. But they also have to worry about, well, we gotta kind of hold it back a little bit to make it work within the confines of 8-year-old technology. Which version is gimped? Is the 360 version gimped because they developed an Xbox One game to also work hand in hand with the 360, so they had to use similar coding? Or is the Xbox One version gimped because they had to go back and focus on it being also compatible with the 360? That's my question. because I think that if a developer only had to work within the confines of the Xbox One, they could figure out all kinds of ways to open up that CPU, to open it up, to make it work fluently and better, and we might actually see better quality games coming out of it, smoother frame rates. Now, this is all coming from a guy who doesn't give a crap about specs. Obviously, I don't give a crap about specs. But what I'm getting at is that for those people that do care about the specs, and for the developers that do want to have that extra horsepower, it makes sense to me to want to develop only for the Xbox One and learn how it works, instead of worrying about, we now have to develop this game also for the 360, or we also have to hand it off to another developer to work on it hand in hand with us while we make the Xbox One version. And so that's more money, more development costs, and when the game doesn't sell up to our standards, that's more money that we've lost. And the third reason is just because this is what happens. I mean, this is the first time that I have seen this happen. This is the first time that I have seen a console war between other consoles made by the same company. See, in the past, there was no competition. It's like, here's the PlayStation 2, it plays PlayStation 1 games, so you have no reason to have your PlayStation 1 anymore. Buy the PlayStation 2. Here's the GameCube, here's the Xbox, here's the Dreamcast. They don't even support the old hardware, so you either have to stick around and hold on to the N64, or you have to embrace the GameCube. And then if the Wii, here's the Wii, it's backwards compatible to the GameCube. Here's the PlayStation 3. At first, you were backwards compatible to PlayStation 2 and PlayStation 1. Here's the 360. We're semi-compatible with Xbox games. But now you have systems that, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, that are not backwards compatible to their own games. So now you have to develop the game specifically for the older version. So now you have a game that is competing on both the 360 and the Xbox One. Microsoft is competing with themselves at this point. The Xbox One is not only competing with the PlayStation 4, but it's also competing with the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360, as well as the Wii U. But the Wii U is not competing at all with the Wii because it's backwards compatible to the Wii, so you can just keep your Wii games. But now somebody has to decide, well, do I want to get an Xbox One because I have a whole library of Xbox 360 games that I want to keep? But I already have a 360, I can just buy this game on my 360. So you're not selling Xbox Ones, you're just selling the game, which is going over to the 360. So, again, it helps development, it helps sales of the system, and I think that it ultimately is just going to be better because you're no longer competing with the 360. You're able to focus all your efforts on making the Xbox One be the system. Get commercials out there, make the games better, make it to where people want to buy it, and then say, we're not making games for it anymore. I understand that in some ways you're going to alienate your old 360 audience and stuff like that, but that's how it used to be. That's how I grew up. I remember when I got my hands on perfect example was I got my hands on the Dreamcast. It didn't work with Saturn games. That was unheard of. This is a brand new system. Why would I think that they're going to release Sonic Adventure for the Saturn? Why would I have thought that Super Mario World was going to work with my NES? That didn't happen. When the Super Nintendo came out, pretty much all talks of the NES were gone. No one cared about it anymore. This is the first time in the 40 some odd years that gaming has been around. I don't even have the words for it, I'm sorry. But this is the first time that we've had to be concerned about different versions of the same game. So now there's like 4 different versions of the same game floating around, 5 if it comes out for PC. And the people who play PC games, they're going to play it on the PC. People who play it on the 360 just can play it on the 360. But if no one's buying an Xbox One because the games are coming out for 360, you have no reason to sell an Xbox. They have no reason to buy an Xbox One. And developers see that no sales are going to the Xbox One, so they don't want to make games for the Xbox One. And it loses its steam, it loses its support. So I know that it kind of sucks. You don't want to alienate those fans that you have, those millions and millions of subscribers that you have through your 360. But that wasn't an issue with your Xbox. You dropped that after I think like a year of the 360 being out. And it wasn't an issue back in the day. When the Nintendo 64 came out, it was just understood that it's not backwards compatible to Super Nintendo games, and it had a whole different set of games, a whole different set of controllers, and you bought it. And the games that are going to come out for it are exclusive for it. That's all that there was to it. And I think that it would just help the Xbox One if they just dropped support for the 360. I'm not looking forward to it because, again, I have a lot of games that I have yet to play. And the games are already going down pretty cheap now because of the Xbox One. But if you drop that online, I can't get online to get the achievements that I want. But I really do think that in some ways it will help. Just in some ways, I think it will help. So if you want to keep support, so ultimately here's what I think you need to do. My final decision. Drop support for the 360, but maybe do it in like a year and do it very slowly. Trickle it down. Maybe make 1 or 2 titles a year also come out for the 360. To where the people who are still playing games on their 360 are seeing less and less support for it. It's kind of like weaning a child off of breast milk. You know, you start giving them food more and more and the breast milk less and less. Until eventually they are just eating whole food. And they don't even remember the breast milk. And I think that that's sort of the same way that this should work. Have games come out less and less for the 360 and less for the PS3. And start having more of the bigger titles coming out exclusively for these next generation, current generation consoles. And leave the past in the past. The Xbox 360 is basically a dinosaur at this point. It's basically 8-year-old technology. You can't really advance it much more. You can't expand the disk space much more. It's really kind of just already, it's met its limitations. It's time to focus on new technology and see what kind of limitations we can take it to. That's just my 2 cents on it. Make sure that you share yours. And as always, if you like what you hear, like this video, subscribe to my channels. I do my best to make channels here every week. Leave comments on the subject, and also leave me messages on what you would like me to talk about. And of course, I'll give you a shout out if I do. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next time.